Dispelling the myth of seeing red when fighting. One of the oldest MMA memes online is the saying, "I'm different, bro. When I fight, I just see red and go crazy." Of course, this is a joke, but there are actually people that have this viewpoint about fighting in real life. An example of this was when actor Bryan Callen was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Here, he claimed he was a good fighter simply just by losing it when fighting. This comment was met with laughter by both Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub, who both knew the hard reality of fighting and self-defense. The term seeing red is certainly real. However, you don't literally see red. This term is used to describe a scientific fight or flight response when the brain is put under severe stress. Basically, you will experience a loss of control, and whilst you're still conscious, your brain will go into autopilot. In short, this is a bit like experiencing extreme anger, where you suddenly lose clarity and the primitive part of your brain takes over. In other words, seeing red is a real thing when it comes to fighting. Not everyone always experiences it either. Some people may see red and go crazy when initiating combat, whereas others may be able to remain mindful and aware of the situation no matter how physical it gets. The meme of seeing red originally came about when people wrote on forums and early social media about a certain stereotype of MMA fan. These were commonly found in sports bars watching UFC whilst also being loud and arrogant. Put simply, these were the type of casual fans who would shout "stand them up" and "why didn't he dodge that punch?" as if they were better at fighting than literal professionals. This may be an extreme version of reality, but these people certainly do exist. Continuing with the meme, these people also often wear tap-out t-shirts whilst they're physically out of shape, and yet believe they're special experts when it comes to fighting, despite having no real training in martial arts. Remember, MMA may have a more polished image these days, but this took years to cultivate. In its earlier stages, it attracted a lot of knuckleheads who wanted violence at any cost and didn't care for the technical side of fighting. When fighting against the untrained, seeing red could give you an edge based on raw aggression. If you took two fighters of equal attributes in every single area, the more aggressive fighter would likely win. However, it's not like one fighter will see red whilst the other won't. Usually the levels of adrenaline and aggression will be fairly similar. Therefore, you're probably not at a big advantage if you think you'll have some kind of edge when seeing red. However, seeing red usually isn't good. In fact, it can be quite damaging. For instance, if a fighter rushes forward without thinking, then they could easily get tagged by a good counterpuncher. In other words, you can't just be completely wild when fighting, and whilst aggression is necessary, it certainly needs to be controlled. More than aggression, technique, fight IQ and a good game plan are arguably more important. This is because you can actually map out a literal way of winning the fight, rather than wildly swinging and hoping for the best. Sometimes you can see professional MMA fighters see red and have a furious start, only to get picked off over time by a technician. By far the most dangerous part of seeing red is running out of cardio and having an adrenaline dump. Here you start breathing heavily out of your mouth, which means you don't get enough oxygen circulating around your body. This results in an explosive start, but then a dump shortly after. This means that if the opponent withstands the initial burst, then it's certainly not going to be good for the person who saw red. So, in conclusion, seeing red is generally not a good thing when it comes to fighting. This is certainly the case if you're against an experienced or skilled fighter who can remain calm. Here, seeing red will probably result in a loss, despite a very aggressive start. At the same time, there is something to be said about seeing red. If you're naturally very passive, then you could easily become overwhelmed pretty quickly if you don't act fast. This is the scientific reason why seeing red exists, because it allows humans to tap into an aggressive state they might not have. To summarize, seeing red isn't ideal when fighting, and even more so, it can land you in legal trouble. No one likes a hothead who can't control their temper or emotions. Nonetheless, it's not always a bad thing if you do find yourself in a self-defense scenario with unskilled opponents. It can give you a potential edge during combat. However, there are pretty huge drawbacks.